Okay, typography is also really important aspect in UX. So especially when you do designs for mobile screens or the desktops, the typography can give the message that you want to give. For an example, let's say you want to develop an application for the companies or professional sector. So the typefaces that you have to select in that particular scenario is different. You have to convey the message. You have to select some professional text. Whereas when you try to create an application for the kids or some learning students, the typography that you have to select is different. So especially for kids, you might have to select some playful fonts to get their attention. And for the study purposes, you might have to select a more readable font because there can be so many readable content. So you have to consider all this when you selecting a typeface or a typography on your uh, designs. One story I can tell you, when Apple and Macintosh launched their first operating system back in 80s, Macintosh from the first go, they had good typography. If you listen to Stanford lecture that Jobs given, he mentioned how he learned about typography, how he applied what he learned during the first invention of Apple Macintosh computer and so on. So if you consider those factors, that is one of the main selling points of Apple during those days. Even now, when you compare many other operating systems, especially Android or uh, Windows, Apple have good UI, especially good typography when comparing to other things. So when you launching a product, you have to select a good typography, good font faces to catch or match your audience requirements. All right, these are some of the widely used font faces that exist. So I think most of you are already familiar with all of these. These are available in uh, any operating system. I think these are available in Macintosh or even Windows computers. So these are some of those widely used fonts. I got this one from Interaction Design Foundation. Uh, the These are the widely used fonts in industry. All right. So we talked about typography and typeface and then font. So let's go to number one font source that you can get fonts from. So Google Fonts is number one because it is open source and free, and you can download or you can even call their fonts using their content delivery network and use it in your website. If you go to Figma, actually, they have already implemented all of these fonts, all of these Google fonts. So you don't have to install them manually. Uh, Almost all of these Google fonts are installed in Figma. All right. So if I go here, let's look for a font. They have different sectors for fonts and auto and even icons and knowledge as well. So we are going to go to the fonts section and I'm going to select one font face from here. Let's select this one, Enter. So this is the typeface, and inside the typeface we have fonts. So these are fonts. Uh, those fonts have different categories. Thin 100 is the thickest, uh, with the less thickness, and the black 900 is the most thickness one. So you can type one paragraph here and see how it will look like in your designs as well. So you can use Google font whenever you do the design. So actually you don't have to download the font because Figma is already implementing that Google fonts in their system. But let's say you want to install a font like a custom font. So another tool is Adobe TypeKit. So in TypeKit, most of the fonts are not available freely. So you have to pay and get the license and then download it. So these are some designer fonts that you can use in your websites. And another website that you can download fonts freely is this one, the font. So let's say you want to download one font from here and use it in your Figma design. So what you can do is you can first download the font and install it in your system. And you need to have a Figma application downloaded to your computer. You can't install a font in web version. So if you have the downloaded version of Figma, after you install the font, if you restart your Figma application, it will show up in your font list right here. So that is how you can install a font. All right. So let's go back to our presentation. Okay, fonts are specific weights within a typeface. You choose a typeface, you use a font. If you were select Georgia as your typeface, then Georgia bold, italic, and regular would be your fonts. So I have selected Inter as my typeface. So thin 100, extra light 200, regular 400, and all these are my fonts. Character is an individual element, most commonly a single letter, number, or a punctuation mark. So inside our fonts, we have characters. So any of these can be a character. So it can be a letter, number, or a punctuation mark, symbol, or anything. So we call them alphanumeric. So it can be one of those. We call them a character, the single element. Weight, height, and size. This refers to the thickness, length, and overall size of a typeface. You can experiment with different weights and sizes and use the variations judiciously on your type interface to break the monotony on a long passages of text or to direct attention to a specific elements. So in here, let's say this is my card. So let's say I want to create some hierarchy between texts. So what I can do is I can add a heading right here. That is the first thing I can do. So let's add a heading. My heading, I will just call it a heading. And we can change the thickness of this text and maybe the size. So that will give users the freedom to read it clearly. So they can quickly distinguish between the what is the paragraph and what is the heading, and they can uh, give their attention to the main parts of the screen. So that is how you can maintain the readability as well. And in the paragraph itself, we can change the text, like we can bold some text or we can italic some of these. So you can play around and make it more readable for your users. Because if you put so many text in the screen for an, let's say in Figma, it is not that readable. Especially most of the users have very less attention span nowadays. So they don't read your full content. So in that particular cases, what you can do is you can highlight the certain parts that you want their attention to be, and maybe italic or some other, you can use some other decoration to get their attention to your text content that you think that they should read before proceeding to your application. Okay, next we have letter spacing or tracking, the distance between the widest point of each character. Tracking specifically refers to uniform increase or decrease in horizontal space between characters. So if I show it here in this paragraph, so this is tracking or letter spacing. So it will increase the spacing between letters. So always make sure to keep it uh, 0. That is the default value on Figma. In particular cases that you select a typeface that characters are too close to each other, you can use this one to increase the readability. Or maybe for a logo, if you want your fonts to be spread out, you can use this particular function to make it happen. Next one is alignment. Alignment refers to how text is positioned. There are 4 main alignments: left, right, centered, and justified. So I think you're already familiar with this. Even in word processor, they have these alignments. So in Figma, also we have left align, center align, right align. If you go inside this, and there's a justified as well. So those are the four main alignments in Figma itself. All right, any questions so far? Okay, now we have some typography principles that you should consider and follow as good practices when you do your designs. Okay, number one is keep the number of fonts used at a minimum. Using more than 3 fonts make a website look unstructured and unprofessional. Keep in mind that too many type sizes and styles at once can also wreck any layout. So let's say you try to design a website for a social media application or something like that, and you decide to come up with 3 or 4 different fonts, one for heading, another one for paragraph, another one for call to action buttons, and so on. So that is not a good practice. Always try to make sure you use a minimum, like maximum 3 fonts, 3 typefaces. So let's say, for an example, most of the time when I do a design, I try to use a maximum 2 typefaces. One for headings. This is I'm talking about website design. In mobile application design, it is a good practice to use only one typeface. I will tell you the reasons. So if you use too many typefaces, let's say you have to load all these typefaces to your website as well. So that will decrease your website speed, because we have to send 3 separate requests or number of requests based on the typefaces you selected to the server. And server responding times can be varied based on the typeface URL that you are selected. Even if you, uh, what we do is, if we don't have those fonts on Google or anywhere, most of the websites, they try to self-host these fonts. So that is also another thing that you have to consider. If you into coding, if you into front-end development, uh, in case if there's not any necessary requirement, if you can't find the font or anything, you can self-host your font in your server. But otherwise, always try to make Google font, use Google Fonts. So in that way, it will load your fonts quickly, and it will available every time as well. But always make sure to use maximum of 2 3 fonts. Otherwise, in design wise, it is not matching, because you have to match 3 4 different fonts in your designs, and also in a speed wise, it is not a good practice as well. So always make sure to uh, not use too many fonts, too many type sizes and styles also in your design, because it will distract your users. It will decrease the usability and readability of your content as well. Okay, next one is try to use standard fonts. Font embedding services like Google Fonts or TypeKit have a lot of interesting fonts that can give your design something new, fresh, and unexpected. So what can go wrong? So always make sure to use these font embedding services. They use content delivery network, which is called CDN. So it will uh, give you fonts like, uh, you can connect to those servers quickly rather than self-hosting your fonts. So always make sure to use Google Fonts. On specific case, you can use TypeKit fonts as well. The next one, actually, this approach has one serious problem. Interesting fonts can distract users from reading. Users can spend time thinking about the fonts that designers use rather than reading the text. So make sure to read, use a readable font. So if you use some decorative or uh, some other fonts that don't do the job that it's supposed to do, if it is a text-rich website that you want your readers to uh, users to read your content, always make sure to use less decorative, readable text. So it will the users will give their attention to reading that rather than text itself. Otherwise, they will try to look at the typography and not to read it. Okay. Number one is keep the number of fonts to the minimum. Number two is try to use standard fonts. Number three, limit line length. Having the right amount of characters on each line is key to the readability of your text. It shouldn't be your design that dictates the width of your text. It should also be a matter of legibility. So let's say you have this kind of a paragraph. I will create a new paragraph right here. Okay, this is my paragraph. So if you put your text all the way from your one side of your screens to the other side of the screen, it is not that user friendly. It is not readable when comparing to a text that only spreading uh, certain characters in one line. So I will tell you, you should have around 60 characters per line if you want a good reading experience. Having the right amount of characters on each line is key to the readability of your text. So let's say you don't have this kind of a layout and you have the text all spreading all the way from your left hand side of your screen to the right hand side. So users try to read this text, they uh, find it difficult when comparing to less amount of words. So especially as humans, we have very limited memory. So we can only remember up to 6, 7 words per uh, in our cognitive memory. So that is the idea behind that. So if you give them like your content in chunks, they will be able to remember. They can remember what they read already, so they don't have to go back and try to read it again when they read the next sentence or the paragraph. So make sure to use that in your designs as well. In here, I have demonstrated what is the ideal range. So this is too narrow. Below 40 is too narrow. So you are not using your screen well. So because especially in desktop and mobile devices, we have very limited white space, very limited screen size. So if you don't use your screen size wisely, you won't be able to put all the other necessary things. Let's say you are creating a website with images and text and buttons and everything. So if you waste your space like this, you don't have space to put other things in your screen. So 40, below 40 is too narrow. So this is too wide. Uh, Something around 90 is too wide. Something around 40 and 60 is the ideal range. So you can see even by looking at these screens, the first one is readable, but it is not using the white space or the screen size wisely. Last one is too wide. It is hard to read as well. This is the ideal range. So always make sure to uh, keep your text in this ideal range, 40 to 60 characters per line. It is different from mobile devices. You should go for 30 to 40 characters per line. So when your mobile device is on portrait mode, you have to make sure that you only use 30 to 40 characters per line. Below is an example of two sites weaved on a mobile device. The first one uses 50 to 75 characters per line, optimum number of characters per line for print and desktop, while the second one uses 30 to 40 characters. So in here, this is the uh, mobile version, even though it is not optimized for mobile. This one is the mobile optimized website which only uses 30 to 40 characters per line. So this is very readable when comparing to this one. Okay. Choose a typeface that works well in various sizes. Users will access your site from devices with different screen sizes and resolutions. Most user interfaces require text elements of various sizes. Button copy, field labels, section headers, etc. So when you try to find a typeface, always make sure to select a typeface that work well in different screen sizes as well. Let's say you select a typeface when it is in mobile, it is displaying quite well. But when it comes to larger screen sizes, smart TV or any screen sizes, it is not that good. It is not readable. So always make sure to test your text element, paragraphs, buttons, or anything before you launch it to the market or before you uh, finalize your designs. So as a designers, you have to consider that there are a number of devices out there. They can be mobile phones, they can be tablets, desktops, larger screen sizes, even televisions or wide screens. So you have to consider your use case and what are the what are the devices that most of the users will use our application or browse our website. So consider all these and select a font face based on that. It is important to choose a typeface that works well in multiple sizes and weights to maintain readability and usability in every size. Okay, so let's say you have a typeface in your mobile and you did a mobile first design. So that means you designed your mobile version, website's mobile version first. So after that, when you try to uh, change your design for the desktop, you find out that your typeface that you have selected is not that good when it is in larger size. And we don't uh, have any experience in designing for the TV or large screen just yet. So what you can do is then select a font that works well in desktop, and maybe there are some you can have a monitor or something, some larger screen, and test the font that you selected, one character by character, is it readable? And then try to make sure it is readable in larger size screens as well. So that is how we uh, generate and select typeface based on the requirement. So if it is only for the mobile device, it is only mobile application, it is okay. But if it is going to be on different screen sizes, you have to consider all these and you have to uh, resize it and see if it is readable in larger sizes as well. Okay, these are some font sizes. So if I go to our Google Classroom, right here. So in here, I have added some extra resources as well. So if I open here, we have typescale.com. So in typescale, what you can do is if you select a font, let's select one typeface from here. So I'm going to select Poppins as my typeface. So it will give you, if you select a base size, body size, let's select 14 as my body size for the font in pixels. It will give you all other text sizes, hierarchy of text sizes comparing to my base size. So this is one REM, and if I put pixels here, this is 14 pixels, and it will give you text sizes all the way up to heading 1 and even smaller sizes as well. And it also give you a preview of how it will look like in different device sizes as well. So that is a good tool that you can play around and select a font based on your website's requirement. Even in Google, you can type whatever the paragraph or the message or the text that you want and see how it will look like in different scenarios. Even here, you can see how it will look like in your designs. So always make sure before you select a font in your design, like try to use it in different areas. If your website has headings, try to create a heading with a bold text and see, is it looking good in my website? So do I have to select another font that look better? So those are the questions that you should ask when you selecting a font. Avoid all caps. All caps text, meaning text with the all letters capitalized, is fine in contexts that don't involve reading, such as acronyms or logos. But when your message involves reading, don't force your users to read all caps text. So this text, when comparing to this one with the sentence case or lowercase letters, is very hard to read because you have to give individual attention to each of these characters. But in here, when we have all lowercase or a sentence case, it is, you don't have to pay much attention. You can read it automatically. So make sure to give your users the same features when you launch in your application. Don't try to use all caps if it is not a logo or if it is not acronym. If it is a paragraph or readable content, always use sentence case or a paragraph case, lowercase. All capital print greatly retards the speed of scanning and reading in comparison with lowercase type. So as I mentioned. Okay, next one is don't minimize spacing between lines. In typography, we have a special term for the spacing between two lines of text, leading or line height. So in Figma, you can increase line height by increasing this. So make sure if it is ideal, uh, Figma gives the value as auto. So if you, in specific cases, if you want more padding, you can give it a value. So let's give it something around 30. It will increase the readability, but you have to sacrifice your screen size, the white space. So that is not a good thing because when we have very limited space to deal with. So always make sure to have this as auto, and in any specific cases, if you really need to increase the line height, you can do so by increasing this value. Okay, by increasing the leading, you increase the vertical white space between lines of text, generally improving readability in exchange of screen real estate, as I mentioned. As a rule, leading should be about 30% more than the character height for good readability. So if you count it clearly, so this character height, if this character height is 1, and then you have to have leading at least around 30. So that is the ideal range for good readability. So you don't have to calculate that. Figma is giving an option. If you give it as auto, it will automatically adjust to the ideal range for the line height. Okay, this one is good, and this is too much. We are wasting our screen size and white space, and this is too tight. It is not that readable. So always make sure to use auto as your line height parameter and use this kind of a readable text, something in between too tight and too much. Properly using white space between paragraphs has been proven to increase comprehension up to 20%, as pointed out by Dimitri Fedio. So if you use your white space properly, if it is a readable, if it is a text-rich website, if you use your white space properly, it will increase the readability and the comprehension. And if you use too tight text, it is not doing the same thing. The skill of using whitespace lies in providing your users with a digestible amount of content, then stripping away extraneous details. So when your users reading whatever the content you have in your website, they have a very limited memory. Our cognitive memory can only memorize up to 7 to 8, 6 to 7 words per one go. So make sure to give your information in chunks. So that is what we are doing here. This is good, but this is taking too much space vertically. So in here, you can clearly see this right-hand side design is very readable when comparing to this one. We can easily distinguish between the heading and the subheading, and even this description, and also the paragraphs have a good white space between those each of these elements. All right. Next one is make sure you have sufficient color contrast. So let's say you selected the typeface and you consider the readability and everything, and then you have to put that in your designs. So these are the things that you consider when you are designing with the selected typeface. These lines of text do not meet the color contrast ratio recommendations and are difficult to read against their background colors. You can clearly see the white color background with lighter gray text is not readable. And even for this dark theme, dark color text, but lighter gray text on that foreground, it is also not readable. So it don't have contrast ratio recommendation. It is not following that. So that is why those are not readable. When comparing to this one, these are very much readable. So they are using light color background and darker gray version of the text. And down here, black color background, and on that lighter gray. So it is very readable. These lines of text meet the contrast ratio recommendations and are easy to read against their background colors. So make sure you select the right typeface and make sure to maintain the contrast ratio in order for your users to read it clearly without an issue. So these are some tools that you can use to uh, create, like select fonts for your product. You can select by entering whatever the praise you like, and they will give you font recommendation based on your keyword. And you can go to websites such as, let's say, Dribble, and inside Dribble, let's search for something like this. Okay, you came across this kind of a website, this kind of a design, and you don't know what is the font face that they are using. So one thing you can do is you can take a screenshot. So I'm going to take a screenshot of these text that I want to identify what font they are using, and I have it in my desktop. So go to websites like you can Google the term find font from image. So you can upload that image here and try to find out what is the font that they are using. Let's upload that image right here. you click on identify, it will give you the results that familiar to that particular text. So if you don't have a Google version, if you don't remember anything in Google that what this font is, you can use this tool to identify what are the fonts that different websites are using. And maybe you can download this font if it is free, or even you can buy the license and use it in your designs as well. So that is how we identify different fonts. Another thing that you can do is if it is a already published website, let's say I'm going to this website right here. So I want to identify what are the fonts this website is using. So what we can do is we can click on the font that we want to identify, right click on it and go to inspect. And in here, we have the typography they have added. Right here, we have the font family. So you can use this font family, and on Google, you can search for it. And if it is available, it will show up. So that is how you identify different fonts if you want to have the same font on your designs. All right, so that is all for the typography. Do you have any questions?